Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's webinar about improving student retention by promoting emotional wellness on campus. We're very happy to have you with us today. We have about 200 people who have signed in, so we hope this will be very educational and very helpful for you as we have this discussion today. A little bit of house cleaning before we begin. This presentation is being recorded. So we will send you a link to a recording that you can watch again or share with others. You are more than welcome to submit questions. You can see an image on the screen that shows you how to do that. We have time to answer questions, and this webinar is really structured as a panel discussion. So please submit questions as we go along so that I can make sure to include them as we talk to the panelists. My name is Ron Goldman. I'm the co-founder and CEO of Kognito. We're a company based in New York City that develops mental health training for faculty, staff, and students. And I'm very happy to have two great panelists with us today, Miki Sharma from The Ohio State University and Rachel Eskridge from Vanderbilt University. And I'll ask both of them to talk a little bit about themselves, and then we'll provide a little bit of background about the current status and state, and then we'll go into the panel discussion. So, Miki, would you like to go first?
Sure. Thank you, Ron. Good afternoon, everyone. Again, I'm Miki Sharma, and I'm the Director of Student Life Counseling and Consultation Service at The Ohio State University, which is our university's counseling center, housed within the Office of Student Life, which compromises about 40 departments in student life. Our Columbus campus has 59,500 plus students. And in our counseling center, we have 42 senior staff who are psychiatrists, psychologists, social workers, clinical counselors, and a marriage and family therapist. And then we have 20 trainees, some who are full-time, some who are part-time, across those same mental health disciplines. So we offer a wide range of mental health services to the students on our campus. Additionally, I'm the current president of the Association for University and College Counseling Center Directors, AUCCD. You'll hear me reference that over the next hour. AUCCD is an association of individuals who hold my position at institutions of higher education, not just across the U.S., but across the world, as we have a lot of international members. We represent about 800 different universities, and additionally, we have about 100 a maritime member as well.
Rachel?
All right, and I'm Rachel Eskridge from Vanderbilt University. I'm the director of the Center for Student Wellbeing here, which is a new resource that has been open since just August this year. I came from the Psychological and Counseling Center, which is another resource on campus that provides individual therapy, group therapy, medication management, crisis support for our students. At Vanderbilt, we have approximately 7,000 undergrad and a bit fewer, but pretty even number of graduate and professional students. So we're a private institution, highly selective, located in the South in Nashville, Tennessee. And so I'll talk a little bit more about kind of what the center does as we go through today, but thank you all for joining.
Great, thank you very much. So the purpose of the webinar today is really to talk about the link between emotional wellness and retention and academic performance, which is a link that's important to understand because of its impact on the ability, I think, of many of you who work in counseling centers to be able to justify and help support funding and the work, as well as to increase the recognition to the value of what you provide to the institution. So in the next few slides, I want to provide a quick overview of what research tells us about this connection, as well as what research tells us about what's happening in today's campus environment. I know that many of you know these statistics, so I'll go quickly over them. The first one here really talks about the fact that school administrators, not just you, but school administrators in general, almost all of them really agree that mental health is a significant issue at their institution. Part of it is because of the fact that psychological distress continues to be widespread among college students. The number of 40% here is one of the studies. There are others that show even a higher rate of the percentage of students who report psychological distress at a level that really impacts in a negative way their ability to be students and have a strong academic performance. And at any given time, as you can see in the third bullet here, 32% of students are dealing with mental illness, 5% will screen positive for panic disorder, 6% for anxiety disorder, and so on. And about 6% of undergrad and 4% of graduate students have seriously considered suicide. The real issue here, beside the fact that the prevalence of psychological distress and mental health disorders is really significant, is the fact that only 40% of the students actually seek help. And this is a challenge that all of us in this field have really struggled with. You know? How do we get more of these students who need help to come and get the help that's needed? The connection to retention rates has been shown in a number of studies. The one I'm sharing with you here was done by the Healthy Mind Institute. And by the way, these small numbers that you're seeing at the end of each one of these bullets actually correlates to a specific research. We have one of the slides here, actually has all those citations in case you want to go to those later on. So the connection has really shown a few important things. One, which is kind of intuitive, but it's always good for research to show us that that's the case, is that students who experience depression, anxiety, and other psychological disorders tend to perform poorly in class, right? They'll have higher rates of absentees, they'll take a semester off, and they may completely drop out of the school. In fact, 25% of students who drop with a 3.0 GPA or lower actually screen positive for at least one mental illness, right? And when students drop out of school, there is a lot of negative consequences. There are negative consequences for them in terms of their ability to pursue their dreams, secure a job, but also for the institution in terms of reputation. Your ranking as a school is impacted by that number. Definitely tuition dollars just disappear, and even future alumni donations is going down. So, and what I found also interesting is that the study actually can show you how psychological distress has an impact on the GPA, and you can see those two indicators here at the bottom. So the connection and the impact of the student emotional wellness or mental health on retention rates and academic performance, which is, I think, for all of us in the field kind of obvious, is actually being documented and backed up by research. So the good news here is that research have shown that when these individuals, these students who show up and get treated for depression, you can actually avert dropouts. The statistics in a very simple calculation, which you can see here on the screen, is that for every 100 students in a year that will receive treatment, 6 of them will not drop out of school. And if you want to use that in terms of just calculating saving of tuition, if your institution has a $40,000 yearly tuition, and let's say all you did is treat 100 students, you could save the school $240,000 in lost tuition. And if your tuition is $20,000, then it's $120,000. So there's literally a way of calculating, call it a return on investment, call it saving tuition dollars, whatever you want to call it. At the end of the day, you can literally do a mathematical calculation about how much tuition dollar you have saved the school by treating and supporting and helping X amount of students. And that is very, very powerful, and it's something that we, as we work with a lot of institutions, have found to be very helpful to help the center, the counseling center, to justify not just the use of our program, but just general use of programs about their impact, their positive impact on the school in terms of academic performance when it comes to GPA, as well as in actual dollar amount of tuition. So that's just to give you kind of a sense of the background. And what we want to do now is to really turn to our panelists and talk about 4 specific topics that we think are interesting, but please feel free to submit questions so that we can address any other ones. And one of them, the first one, and Miki, I'll let you go first in addressing it, talks about really collaboration between departments. And is it being done? If it's being done, how is this information about retention rate and academic performance help engage these other institutions? If you could maybe talk about clearly your school, but also maybe about other schools that you know as part of your role at the AUCCD.
Yeah, so when we talk about the cross-departmental collaboration, the phrase that comes to my mind is this is a way in which we make mental health everyone's responsibility. It's not going to be effective in any campus community, I don't believe, if we just think that supporting students' mental health is all the role and responsibility of your staff in your counseling center. And this does not mean that we're making all staff and faculty across campus, turning them all into therapists, but rather making sure that all staff and faculty are aware and know what the resources are and how to work with students who are in distress. So the more that we get the counseling center staff collaborating across campus is a really helpful thing to do. So there's some different things that I think continue to grow with time. One of them is a program that is run at a lot of campuses now, but started at Cornell, which is called Let's Talk. And that's when you have a counselor placed in another area or another department across campus that students can come and chat with. It's not therapy, but it's an informal sit-down opportunity for a student to connect with a therapist and just talk about what's going on. Maybe it's developmental, maybe understand what the counseling center staff are doing and how to get connected to services. It makes the services more accessible for students, which is very helpful. Another thing that we are seeing growing more and more is having embedded positions. So this is a newer trend. This is where you have a counseling center staff member who is housed somewhere else on campus, an academic unit, and a residence hall, and another department. So it's a member of the counseling center team, but they spend their time across campus. And so we have started doing this in the last couple of years here at Ohio State, but looking at the AUCCD survey, so what we're finding is 7% of counseling centers are doing this right now. This number continues to creep up every year. And so we are seeing it more at larger institutions because they have a larger number of staff versus, say, institutions that have where the staff is at campus of less than 5,000. But even those instances, you may see opportunities where the staff spend a certain amount of hours or time across campus. What this is doing is involving this other area, this other department in providing mental health services for students. And that's kind of getting the buy-in across campus, and it's bringing the service to that department to a specified student group over there. So it's also effective if you have a certain group of students that you're more concerned with that might have more mental health needs than other students on your campus, or the opposite end of the spectrum, if there's a group of students that you think has been underutilizing your campus counseling center, increasing accessibility by having the clinician over there will increase the utilization of the service by those students as well.
Rachel, would you like to comment? I have a few questions, but if you could comment, please.
Sure. So we also utilize the Let's Talk program at Vanderbilt, which has helped us in terms of the cross-departmental collaboration. And we definitely don't have a perfect system, but we have worked hard at discovering the gaps that exist and developing some ways to meet some of the needs that we're seeing. And collaboration has been a big key there. So I think there are just a couple of avenues that I'll highlight and the way that we do this. One way that I was thinking about that's been really helpful has been to meet with our campus partners, with our kind of care team, behavioral intervention team during the midterm season. So if there are students who are receiving multiple midterm deficiencies, in the middle of the semester, then we would be concerned about that and want to develop a plan for following up with that student. And really the hope there would be to either develop the support system that they need to be able to keep them in school and to keep them, help them to be successful in school, or to figure out maybe if they may need a leave, and then the time to come back. So that's been really, really useful for us in helping to get the student support. And also just with that same group of individuals meeting biweekly, talking about developing strategies for reaching the students who are struggling. And a method of getting the information that we utilize has been a student of concern reporting form, which is also something new this year, which has been extremely helpful. So an online reporting form that faculty or students or staff can submit if there's somebody that they're concerned about. Faculty use it most often, writing about if a student's work has changed in quality, or if a student is no longer coming to class. So really kind of keeping the focus and on students, on helping to keep them in school, or helping to get them to a leave of absence if that's what they need, and get them back.
So I have a couple of questions here from participants. And one of them has to do with when you work with other departments, how do you get them to commit to doing something? How specific are you in what you want them to do? And I guess the real question here, is yes, you can meet with departments. They're going to say, sure, we're going to help you, but sometimes they end up not doing much. So what are maybe tips that you can provide to ensure that those commitments are actually followed? Vicki, maybe if you want to try to answer that.
So I think in working with other departments or stakeholders across campus, what you're talking about, what that question is getting at is, how do we get buy-in from our campus partners or from other areas of campus to be supportive, whether it's to house therapists or to work with the counseling center? So one of the most significant data points from our AUCCCD survey, so we do this annual survey of our members, and our 2015 monograph is on the AUCCCD website, and we'll have next year's, the 2016 monograph should be up next month. But 71% of students, this is of students who went to the counseling center across our centers nationally and internationally, 71% of the students who use counseling services reported that it helped with their academic performance. And I think that is crucially important because students are coming to campus to get a degree, and the counseling center's role is to help them be academically successful. So you want to get buy-in from these partners, and you want people to be supportive. That's a data point that you can look at nationally and then track that data locally at your institution to how your services are helping students to be academically successful, because that's what everybody on campus is going to want. That's why the universities exist, is to help students get their degree and then launch their career. So I would say look at the point of how the work you're going to do is going to help students be successful. And that's just one element. That's an important element on the academic side, but there's other ways where it can help in terms of on the social side, in terms of their relationships, and in terms of their overall functioning and their level of happiness and life satisfaction.
So a second part of this question, Rachel, maybe you want to try to answer that, has to do with your own measure of success. So I think this question is really, if at the end of a year or the beginning of an academic year, you need to meet with whoever you report to, provost, VP Student Affairs, and you have your 5 or so main points of how to evaluate your impact of the counseling center on students or on the school. Could you share with us what is that metrics for you? What are those kind of what's known as a KPI in a way, key performance indicator you use in your school?
I think this is an area that we're continuing to refine, but one thing that the Counseling Center has been working on is a satisfaction survey of the students that are receiving services. So of course that's a group of students who are engaged in services there, and so it doesn't give a full picture, but it gives a picture of kind of how the services are helping them, like Mickey said, to meet their academic goals and helping them to achieve academic progress and success in school. We also have questions on an annual survey that goes out to every single student, and those questions are about mental health functioning, and they're a really great indicator of kind of how our services are supporting our students, and being able to look at them on a yearly basis. Looking at that data has really been key for us. We've also just this year started utilizing the Healthy Mind Survey, which we hope can also help us to have these kind of benchmarking data points.
Okay, great, thank you. Mickey, do you have anything specifically on these metrics that you want to add before we move on to the next topic?
Yeah, a quick thing I would add, I completely agree with Rachel on the use of the satisfaction survey, and we do that at our counseling center at Ohio State. And our satisfaction survey that we do each semester, just from this past fall of students who receive services on our campus, 89% of those students reported their clinician helped them work on or resolve their problems. And that, again, to me, is a key point, because that means students who are coming to the counseling center are finding effective help. If we're helping them solve their problems, that means then, in turn, they're going to be more academically successful, and it's going to aid with student retention. So I think the use of the satisfaction surveys that Rachel mentioned, you can do that in the counseling center, but you can do that in other departments across campus as well. It can really help you get some KPIs, as you mentioned, to really look at the effectiveness of the service you're providing.
Great. So let's move on to the next bullet here, which talks about early identification and intervention programs. And I think what will be interesting here to share also has to do with how you actually engage the audience, whether they are faculty, staff, and students, in becoming, what was known in the past as a gatekeeper. Not necessarily as in how you train them. We clearly know that there's in-person, there's online programs, but how do you actually motivate them to engage? If you could share maybe the tactics that you use to reach out to them, or the messaging that you use to make sure that they actually want to learn these skills and develop their awareness and be active in this type of early identification. Rachel, do you want to go first?
Sure, I can go first here. We've really worked hard, I think, on trying to refine some of these systems in terms of the training methods and getting people engaged in the training, especially with faculty and staff. We do utilize Kognito. This year we were lucky enough to be able to partner with our faculty and staff wellness program, and made Kognito a part of that program. So completing Kognito offered a credit for the staff wellness, faculty and staff wellness initiative, which was great and hugely successful. And we had in total we've had about 1,800 faculty and staff complete Kognito, and that's something that has been extremely helpful. On the student side, we were able to make the completion of Kognito a part of our student engagement program, where the students get credit for completing a menu of events and activities, which kind of engages them in a leadership track. So we've had a similar number of students complete Kognito, about 1,800, and have found that to be really helpful. But one piece of that I wanted to make sure to comment on is that we are not just kind of sending a link or asking students or faculty to complete Kognito, but also providing information that we would like to come to your department or to your student group and actually have an in-person conversation about these topics after you have completed the module. has been really, really helpful and useful in engaging the populations. And we've been able to kind of do some role playing and talking through situations that maybe they have encountered in the past, or maybe that they are worried they may encounter.
Right. So Mickey, a question for you is, we talk about collaboration between departments. That's great. That's important. But the faculty and the staff, especially the faculty, right, is not really part of that. I mean, they're part of that department, but they're not the chair of the department, right? So how do you get them engaged in doing anything? I mean, it doesn't really matter what's the type of program that they go through. What is the message? Do you tell them, come learn about suicide prevention, come learn how to support your student academic performance? What is that messaging that have worked for you, and please also share those that didn't work, to get this audience that we can all agree is not that easy to engage in learning new skills, building their awareness, building their knowledge on this topic?
So I'm going to really support a comment that Rachel just made, which is going to the faculty. So what I find to be most successful in this vein is if I form connections with the chairperson of the department or a dean. And the way that helps is because if I can get on the agenda of their faculty meeting at some point, whether it's 15 minutes, 45 minutes, or whatnot, I have a captive audience. Because it's more challenging if I pick a day and time and invite faculty to come to presentation at X location. If I go to their faculty meeting and I'm on that agenda and I have some time to speak, they're present and I can get them engaged at that point. I think the selling point that I have found that can be effective with our faculty and our staff is, again, coming back to how this information is going to help faculty in their jobs and how it's going to help them support the students that they deal with on a regular basis. The other thing that I found is effective is to elicit from faculty what are their struggles or concerns with students. If you get that information in advance, then you can tailor your presentation or your talk to address that. So then what you're doing is you're helping people be more successful in their work with students. And that's something that usually tends to be pretty engaging, and people tend to be more invested in that type of presentation.
And we're getting a question we got in the first session we did about this on Monday, which has to do with the students and whether the students today versus the students, let's say 10 years ago, are in any way different in their general need for mental health support, but also in terms of how you provide services or even the type of services that you provide to students. Has that changed because of a different demographic or a different personality of students, etc.? Wonder if you could comment on that, if you think about the work you did 10 years ago and you're doing today, on how that changed. Rachel, if you want to answer first.
Sure. I think one of the big things that we're seeing with our students at Vanderbilt is that it's a much more competitive group of students. The admissions process has gotten much more selective over the past 10 years, and therefore the type of students that we have are highly, highly competitive and a very over-involved, stressed group. And I think that has just gotten really more so the case in the past few years, that this is a group of students who may not necessarily want to dedicate an hour to going to a workshop or dedicate an hour even for therapy. So what are some ways that we can do kind of quick informational presentations, give students skills that they need to manage their stressors and in the space that they're in? So kind of as Mickey was talking about going to the faculty in their spaces, also doing that with the students. If they're going to be in a Greek chapter meeting anyway, can we get in there for 15 minutes and teach a little breathing exercise or teach an activity? And so trying to get into the student spaces so we're not asking them to add another thing to their schedules, or getting the student group maybe to come to our center for one of their meetings and instead of meeting in their normal spot. So I think having to get a little bit more creative in terms of ways to engage students, that has been a need of ours lately.
Mickey, do you want to comment on that? I'm sure you've seen some changes over the years.
Yeah, one thing that really highlights that change, if you look across 10 years, I think one thing we've all heard, and Ron touched upon this, is that anxiety is the number one thing that comes into counseling centers. That's true in the AUCCD national survey. It's true also in the Center for Collegiate Mental Health, their annual report. The 2016 annual report for them has just been released in the last few weeks. And so anxiety is number one, depression is number two. But the CCMH, the Center for Collegiate Mental Health report, what they have highlighted, again, this is just students who have visited a university counseling center. 1 out of 2 report previous mental health treatment. So that speaks to what today's college student, who this group of students is, that this is a group of people who've had services prior to showing up on your campus. So with that in mind, where a lot of counseling centers have evolved to is providing a menu of different services. Yes, individual counseling is the number one thing that centers will provide. Group counseling continues to grow and be more and more common, and different types of drop-in workshops where students can get resources and go on their way to be growing and provided more and more as well. And then finally, what type of resources or interactive resources can we put on our websites to get coping skills and better coping mechanisms in the hands of students? So kind of shifting, I think what shifted is providing a variety of services to match students' needs. Because we're not going to, not all students need individual counseling, but there can be different ways that we can provide support to them that really match the needs that they're presenting with.
Yeah, and I would like to add to that, one of the statistics that I shared, the last bullet point here on this slide, is that only 40% of students with mental illness seek help. But clearly, I think what we can agree is that over the last, 5-7 years, definitely the last 5, the way that all of us, and especially a younger generation, consumes information is very different. So if in the past it was really about I have to physically come to the counseling center, now there is a lot of information that they may first try to find online on your website, maybe on other website, hopefully reputable ones. And they may be interested in talking over the phone. They may be interested in a chat. They may be interested in a telehealth. There's a lot of different ways for them to seek help, which is not always really physically walking into your office. So that clearly has changed, I think, over the years. I don't know exactly how that impacts everything, but it's definitely a change in the landscape. So let me go to the third bullet here in terms of topics. We heard a lot about this. I think recent, everything from the election to different executive orders have created even more anxiety among international students and minority students. And I'm wondering about if you could talk about the work that you're doing around that, and whether there has been some sort of a need for you to adjust over the last, several months following the election, or that this is not something that you have felt an impact. Mickey, if you don't mind going first, kind of curious about in your case.
So on my campus here at Ohio State, about 12% of our student body are international students. So that's, and on a campus my size, that's thousands and thousands of students. So there has been some significant impact. Our counseling center has worked specifically to do some things to reach out to our international students, not just in the last 3-4 months, but in the last, several years. One thing is partnering with our Office of International Affairs, back to that engaging stakeholders, running that Let's Talk program at the Office of International Affairs, running it at the Multicultural Center over in our Ohio Union. The other thing we've done that's significant is we've worked very hard to build a staff at the counseling center that matches our full student body. So we're able to provide clinical services in 9 different languages. And, and that's really helpful in terms of for students who've come here, especially those students who are international students, to be able to receive clinical services in their first language. It helps in terms of how we engage them, how they can engage in the treatment and work in that fashion. And so we've also, getting back to websites and other ways to interact with folks, we have videos on our website that our staff have made in 5 different languages in terms of welcoming and inviting students to the Counseling Center. So the other piece I think that counseling centers are doing across the country is certainly staying abreast of what's happening nationally and the impact on students, and reaching out to students, writing statements of support for international students or students in general, and putting those on the main page of the Counseling Center, and sending those statements out on social media and across campus to really make sure that students are aware of how the Counseling Center is ready to support international students and all students across campus.
Right. So there's a number of questions that I got as you were talking and before around LGBTQ students as well as veteran students. I'd like, Rachel, for you to comment on that. But before you do that, we have seen around veteran students, which is, not, depending on your school, maybe significant or maybe very not significant portion of your population. There's about 1 million veteran students, and it represents about 1%. So there are schools where they are, can be 10%, and as many schools that are under 1% of the total population. But they are a case, by the way, that because many of them are funded through the GI Bill, that you can make a very strong financial case, again, about the value of having services to support these veteran students who, many of them, may be struggling with adjusting to college life. Could be because of mental health issues, could be just because they're coming from a very different environment, and it's not always an easy adjustment for them. So it's a fairly straightforward, because you can look at their GI, which is a great funding source for the school because the money is definitely going to come as long as the student shows up. So I'm curious, though, Rachel, if you could comment around LGBTQ students and around whether, in your view, whether it's in your school or in other schools, what you're seeing, whether this has really got to the point where school recognize the need to not just, quote unquote, talk about it, but actually to do something and to help educate the entire community about the importance of being supportive, of avoiding biased language or behavior towards those students. Wonder if you could comment on that. There's a number of questions specifically about that and the ability to, again, make a case that it's a worthwhile investment by the institution.
Sure, definitely. We have an office for LGBTQI life on campus that provides great outreach services to students who may identify as LGBTQI, but really their mission is to impact the entire campus community. So not only to allow those students a safe space so that they feel like they are a part of the university culture, but also to help faculty and staff and other students to know really kind of how to interact with somebody who they maybe have never really interacted with before. They offer a number of programs kind of going into spaces. Again, that idea of not expecting people to necessarily sign up on their own for a presentation about how to support LGBTQI students, but instead going into their spaces and doing a workshop or a learning experience. We have students who will go into spaces who identify themselves as LGBTQI and talk a little bit about their experience to be able to allow kind of a personal connection and hopefully open the eyes of other students. And I think that LGBTQ population really fits into the kind of vulnerable population that's at a higher risk for maybe dropping out of school or maybe needing a break because it's a hard experience to be the minority on any campus. So really being able to, we've been able to look at our medical leave process and find ways to support students who are leaving and who are coming back and helping them to develop a student success plan document, which allows the student to outline some goals and resources that they will utilize. And so we've also expanded that practice and that student success plan document, and have used that with other students who may be in a vulnerable population or be a high-risk student, and we'll work with them as far as we can, and also connecting them to other folks on campus, even if it's not necessarily somebody who identifies in the same way as them at the counseling center or at our center, but maybe there's somebody else on campus who's a faculty member or staff member in another area that can connect and maybe serve as kind of a mentor.
Thank you. There's an interesting question here about topics that relate to psychological distress, such as substance use. And there's another question here around sexual assault on campus, and how you view the counseling center role in both of those areas, and how do you see them correlate into your mental health programs? Bit of a tough question, and a lot of different ways to answer it, but I wonder, Mickey, if you could address it first and give us your point of view on it.
Okay, so we're talking about how the counseling center can be involved in the areas of sexual assault as well as alcohol and other drug use and misuse. I think, number one, what you want your counseling center to be available for is treatment and support for students who are impacted by those things, impacted by any type of assault or harassment, or impacted by any type of AOD use. The next thing that I think should be there is, how does the center collaborate with other areas on campus that are also involved in either the prevention or education or the resulting, be it sanctions about that. So that could be your student advocacy office, it could be student conduct, it could be Title IX compliance, however that is structured on your campus. So it's not just about the counseling center being there to provide treatment. That's of utmost importance. But if there's any type of committees or meetings on your campus that address those issues, for the counseling center to have representation on said committees or meetings, not to disclose who is being treated or not being treated, but rather to make sure that from an institutional perspective or from a student affairs and academic perspective, that the mental health needs of students are taken into account. And that's where the counseling center can help to make sure that whatever intervention or strategy or prevention program is being addressed does so in a way that's mindful of students' mental health needs along the process as well.
Great, thank you. So last question that I want to bring up before we kind of start wrapping up. There's a few questions here about graduate students versus undergraduate students, and we haven't really made a separation in our conversation today between the two. I wonder if are there different types of services or different type of an approach that you take when it comes to graduate students versus undergrad? And if you could maybe have a few quick comments on that. Rachel, would you like to go first?
Sure. So we've definitely gotten feedback from graduate students and professional students and the faculty and staff in those areas that they want services that are a little bit different and have unique needs. And we recognize that and have really tried to work on providing services that are unique to the graduate and professional needs. And I think we've been fairly successful there, but could definitely do more in supporting the grad and professional students. One thing that we found, especially with some of our professional schools, is that often their schedules are very different. So they may be working full-time and then coming for class at night or on the weekends, and it's a lot harder for them to engage in traditional services that are kind of during business hours. So we've tried to be creative there, and one area that Mickey mentioned that we continue to explore is, are there things that we can be doing online and more kind of self-guided practice to provide to students as well. And I think definitely some of the professional students fall into that category. But we make sure to have specific class classes for graduate students and professional students. We have received feedback that maybe it isn't appropriate sometimes for a graduate student to be in a process group with an undergraduate student who may see them in another role in a class or something like that. So have tried to have specific times for each of those groups. And even at our center, we have meditation classes and academic skills sessions specifically for graduate and professional students.
Great, thank you. Mickey, there is a request here, and I'm going to turn this to the next slide so you could see it, the contact information for all of us. There's a request here about whether there is a way to participate in your survey or to get a copy of the questions that you use on the satisfaction survey. Could you just quickly respond to that?
Oh, so the satisfaction survey that we do at Ohio State, yeah, I can. So my email is up there. If someone would send me an email, I could send the satisfaction survey questionnaires out in that way. Yes, I could do that.
Okay, great. So we have at least one person in the Netherlands that is on this webinar, and they have a question that Mickey, I'll address to you, that talks about student burnout, and that it's a significant problem in the Netherlands. And they're wondering if you could comment about your schools in case you were seeing an increase in student burnout, and kind of what you as a counseling center is able to do to, I guess, address that challenge.
You know, so, excuse me, last year across our counseling center, what we did is we had what we called a focus on resiliency. So we had a lot of initiatives and programs that focused on student resiliency. And so it was educating students about what is resiliency, what is coping, what is self-care. One of the things that I found that was really effective, and I did this with groups of 10 students, I did it with a group of 250 students. And I would talk to them about self-care and resiliency, and I would describe it as thus. Self-care is the things that we do so we don't fall down. Resiliency is the things that we do when we fall down to get back up. Then I would talk about the importance of both of those. And in that meeting or in that moment, in that presentation, I would have students make a list of 3 things on each side. What are 3 things that you do for self-care, and what are 3 things that you do for resiliency? Students really engaged in that. They make that list, they put it on their phone, it's with them all the time. And that gets them thinking about self-care, but also about resiliency, because no matter what students' self-care plan is, there will be times when they fall down. That's okay. When you fall down, what do you do to get back up? Help them with both sides of that coin, and you're helping them to be successful. You're helping them to increase their retention and graduate from your institution.
Great, thank you. So I could probably continue this call for another couple of hours, and there's plenty of questions we didn't get to, but we are out of time. So I'll ask each one of you to just provide maybe some final comments, going back to the theme of the webinar about the link between supporting the emotional wellness of the student and retention and academic performance. If Rachel, if you could please go first and give us some of your kind of concluding words or words of wisdom on this topic as we conclude.
Sure. So I have read Daniel Eisenberg's body of research on the economic case for student mental health services, and that's been really helpful in my work. So I definitely recommend becoming familiar with the research that is currently available, because as you mentioned at the beginning, Ron, there is quite a bit out there, and just driving home the point in all of our different meetings and things that we go to on campus, that spending money on these resources to help a student who's struggling with mental health will increase tuition revenue, and will increase their satisfaction at the university, which then will help the university to add to its network with gifts as alum. So it really will come back, and I think reaching out for help from individuals who have gone through similar processes when you're working on this in your institution and reviewing the literature are really helpful points to remember.
Thank you. Vicki?
Well, I would say, and I mentioned this before about connecting the services you provide to students' academic success and retention, finding ways to survey or satisfaction questionnaires to get that. I told you all that the national data point is 71% of students reporting counseling center services increase their academic performance. And some good news I can share with everyone, because I think another thing that people try to do on campus is how can I increase resources? How can we add folks in our counseling center? Well, looking across the last 3 years and the AUCCCD survey, in 2013, 37% of counseling centers reported they increased their staff. 2014, 54% of counseling centers reported increase in staff, new positions. 2015, that number was 51%, still above over half the people who did the survey reported they got new positions in the counseling center. So that's a positive trend, and we hope that trend will continue nationally and internationally in terms of universities putting more resources in their counseling centers.
Right. So I want to thank everyone that joined today. I want to thank Rachel and Miki for sharing from their experience and wisdom. I can tell you as a former international student here in New York City that the work you are doing in these counseling centers has huge impact on people. I think you feel it every day, but I can tell you as a former student that it does, and it has a great impact. And so we want to thank you all for all the work that you are doing, and hope you enjoyed this. We will follow up shortly with an email with a recording to this webinar, and please feel free to contact any one of the three of us with any questions that you have. Thank you, and have a great day. Bye-bye.
All right. Thank you.